All right, the case that we're going to discuss together today is the Alex Murdaugh cases. Now, we know that this has power, it has wealth, it has fraud. It is 3 generations of a family that essentially was at the top court and the top circuit of South Carolina. Some even say that they are the most powerful family in South Carolina. Before we get into the timeline of everything that's happened, I want to start with, do you think that Alex Murdaugh is guilty? And if so, why? And if you think he's not guilty, I ask the same question. Why? All right, so this goes back almost 3 generations. The Murdaugh family has been around for a long, long time, and as far back as 1920, they've been serving in the South Carolina 4th Circuit Solicitor and top prosecution representing Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, Allendale, and Colleton counties. I don't know if I said that last one right, but if you can imagine, they are very wealthy and a very powerful family. Now, we're going to fast forward this a little bit to July 8th of 2015. Now, this is, to me, is where the case kind of starts, right? So in 2015, Stephen Smith, he's 19, is found dead on the Sandy Run Road in Hampton County, and no arrests were made in the case. Now, a couple of things on this. So Stephen Smith actually went to school with the eldest son of Alex Murdaugh. Now, the weird part of this situation is that Alex Murdaugh and his brother showed up at the crime scene and were behind the tape for whatever reason. We don't know what that reason is. The authorities said that Stephen Smith was hit by an passing car and might have been hit by by the mirror on the vehicle, and it could have been accidental. Now, further investigation has showed that they believe, or some people believe, that this was intentional. Now, keep in mind, there's never been an arrest made in the case. So the question that I have is, why was Alex Murdaugh at the scene? Okay, not a big deal, but just something to think about. February 2nd, 2018, Gloria Satterfield, 57, falls at the Murdaugh family home on Moselle Road in Colleton County. For more than 2 decades, she had served as the family housekeeper and nanny. Okay, so this is pretty interesting, right? Satterfield dies from her injuries, and according to court documents, Alex Murdaugh tells Satterfield's son that he was responsible and plans to sue himself, so they're financially taken care of. Now, the family says they never received any money. Now, the interesting piece about this is that they've never received any money, and her sons end up going into foreclosure for the mobile home that they lived in, so Alex Murdaugh never really helped them out anyways. Right? But this is like murder number 2, or I shouldn't say murder because it wasn't that they were murdered, but this is death number 2 that's happened close to the house, and that Alex has been somewhat, I wouldn't say tied to, but associated with would probably be the right word. Okay. So now we go to February 24th, 2019. Mallory Beach 19 goes missing after a boat crash near Paris Island. A 911 call is placed from the scene of the crash, Archer's Creek. Okay. About a week later, they find Mallory's body in the marsh area near the Broad River boat landing in Beaufort County. Okay. The Beach family files a wrongful death suit. All right. What's interesting about this one is Paul Murdaugh, who's Alex Murdaugh's son, is accused of being the captain of the vessel that ends up crashing and losing Mallory. Now, we do know throughout the night through surveillance videos that Paul did use his older brother's ID to go in and buy alcohol for the group. He also stopped at a bar where it is said that he had thrown a fit because not everybody wanted to go in the bar and he wanted to go have a few drinks, and this all happened before the crash. And March 2019, the Beach family files a wrongful death lawsuit against a Beaufort County bar, convenience store, and 2 homeowners, all of whom the suit claims served Beach and her underage friends alcohol the night of the crash. The lawsuit was later amended to only name Richard Alexander Murdaugh Sr., Richard Alexander Busta Murdaugh Jr., and Parker's convenience store. Okay, this is pretty interesting because this is basically what's going to blow open the case right now, and this happens right before or a little bit before the murders of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. So April 18th, 2019, Paul Murdaugh is indicted on charges of boating under the influence, causing death, and 2 counts of boating under the influence, causing great bodily injury. Now, Murdaugh pleads not guilty to all charges. On June 4th, 2021, court-ordered mediation in the wrongful death lawsuit fails, which appears to make the case bound for trial. Now, June 7th, 2021, Alec Murdaugh discovers the bodies of his son Paul and wife Maggie at their 1770-acre hunting lodge on Moselle Road, and basically he calls 911 at that point. Now, we can see a lot of stuff that happens from the court case. I won't hit that, but we'll just keep going down the timeline. On June 8th, 2021, authorities confirm the identities of the deceased, referring to the incident as a double homicide. However, they say there is no threat to the public. On June 10th, 2021, Alex Murdaugh has an hour-long interview with investigators about what he says happened the night of the murders. On June 11th, a graveside service is held at Hampton Cemetery for both Paul and Maggie. On June 14th, the coroner confirms both Paul and Maggie Murdaugh died from multiple gunshot wounds. The estimated time of death is somewhere between 9 and 9:30. And then on June 16th, SLED creates a 24-hour dedicated tip line for the case. On June 17th, Alex Murdaugh's brothers, Randy Murdaugh IV and John Marvin Murdaugh, appear in an exclusive interview with ABC in which they plead with the public to come forward with any information. They say they don't know whether the family has enemies, but Paul Murdaugh had received threats. Now, a lot of this is being said that the threats were coming from the boating accident. And actually, Alex is going to talk about this as well. June 21st, SLED releases a handful of heavily redacted documents shedding light on what deputies discovered the night of the murders. On June 23rd, based on information gathered in the Murdaugh investigation, SLED is looking into the 2015 death of Stephen Smith, which we had hit on this timeline prior. Pretty crazy how that works, right? On June 25th, members of the Murdaugh family formally announced a $100,000 reward for the information that would lead to the rest of the double homicide. On July 7th, attorneys representing a survivor of the boat crash that killed Mallory Beach filed a petition alleging law enforcement tried to shift the blame from Paul Murdaugh to their client, Connor Cook. Okay, now it's starting to heat up because I'm going to get to the point here in just a moment of what I think might have led to the murders of Paul and Maggie. So during a court hearing, Circuit Judge Bentley Price said he would review the redactions made by SLED in publicly released documents pertaining to the case, and if he felt they weren't legal, order more information released. On July 22nd, SLED releases a 911 call placed by Alec Murdaugh the night Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were killed. On August 6th, People magazine spotlights the double homicide of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. On August 11th, Alex Murdaugh, joined by Corey Fleming, gives several inconsistent answers while being interviewed by SLED. On August 17th, following the Freedom of Information Act, WJCL receives photos and videos from the South Carolina Attorney General. On September 2nd, after finding a suspicious check on his desk, they say their investigation reveals Murdaugh had been taking money from the firm. Bingo, here we go. We're starting to heat up again. We've got Murdaugh stealing money, and now we know this is a big piece of the case. This is where the fraud comes in. Now, what I want to stop here, and we'll still go through the timeline because there's a lot of stuff happening through the timeline, but just think about this. If you're stealing money, and we're going to hear the number 8 million come up quite a few times, and we're also going to hear about opiate addiction, you probably don't want any legal heat on yourself, because what happens is that people might want to start looking into your background and your history and even your finances, especially if you're getting sued. So keep that in mind as we're going forward on this timeline, because this could make a huge difference. On September 4th, longtime friend and fellow attorney Chris Wilson confronts Murdaugh after finding out Alex had been stealing from him. Wilson says Alex admits to it, apologized, and said he's been addicted to opioids for 20 years. We saw this in the court case, right? Now, hours later, Alex Murdaugh is shot in the head while changing a tire in Hampton County. Now, this one's pretty interesting because if you see the case on this one, detectives are still waiting to see the pictures where he's actually shot in the head or has any injuries that reflect this. So that's pretty interesting to me. Okay, on September 6th, Alex Murdaugh releases a statement that says, in part, he's resigning from his law firm and entering rehab. Later that day, law firm says Murdaugh was stealing money from them. Okay. On September 7th, based on information gathered at the site of the roadside shooting, a search warrant is executed on the home of Curtis Edward Smith. During the search, a sales ledger is discovered. September 8th, the South Carolina Supreme Court suspends Alex Murdaugh's law license. It's still heating up. You getting that? All right. So September 9th, following a Freedom of Information Act, an incident report from the Hampton County Sheriff's regarding law enforcement response to Alex Murdaugh's shooting. On September 10th, a spokesperson representing Alex Murdaugh saying in part Murdaugh's shooting was not self-inflicted. He sustained a skull fracture and the gunman was driving a blue pickup. On September 12th, Alex Murdaugh reportedly admits to his son Buster and brothers Randy and John Murdaugh that he staged the roadside shooting and was trying to kill himself so that Buster could get a $10 million life insurance policy. On September 14th, in connection to the assisted suicide shooting of Alex Murdaugh, authorities say Murdaugh admits that the scheme was set up. Pretty interesting. September 15th, Smith appears via video conference in a Colleton County court for the charge of distribution of methamphetamines. Because it was his first offense, he posted a $5,000 bond. September 17th, Alex Murdaugh received preferential treatment as court as well as the severity of his head wound. On September 18th, in an interview with the New York Post, Curtis Edward Smith said he's being set up by Alex Murdaugh. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is going on for quite some time, and we can see that there's a lot of things that Alex Murdaugh has been tied to. Now, that doesn't make him a killer by any means, but it is pretty interesting that all of this is going on. On September 2019, a spokesperson for the Murdaugh family releases a statement regarding the pending expiration of the $100,000. We're disappointed that no one has stepped forward with any leads to solve the murder and claim the $100,000 reward. On October 4th, the law firm representing the estate of Gloria Satterfield, the former housekeeper of the Murdaugh family who died back in 2018, announced that a settlement had been reached in the case. Okay. So I'm going to stop there because there's a lot of things that have been happening here. I will add one more thing. October 14th, Alex Murdaugh is taken into custody. But I want to go back a little bit and just kind of simplify this case for you. There's a lot of things that are happening, and we've seen through hour-long documentaries and timelines of really what this family has been through in the last, say, 6 or 7 years. And I don't mean that they're victims in any case. I mean, how is Alex Murdaugh tied to a lot of these things that have happened, right? Whether it's the Smith murder/accidental death, whether it is the boat crash or whether it is the housekeeper or the murder of Paul and Maggie. These are all things that Alec, gained a benefit from one way or another. And for me, all of the evidence is pointing the way of Alex Murdaugh, and I think that he is going to be found guilty. And we'll wait to see. We'll see what happens. But I think there's a lot of things that are going on in this case, and I'm trying to sum it up in a short period of time, 20 minutes or less. Normally, I try to keep it at 10 minutes, but there's just so much stuff going on with this guy that we could literally go on for an hour. And if you've been a part of my live stream, we have talked about this in depth, and I would encourage you to come back to the live streams if you want to talk about each one of these instances. But those are typically hour-long live streams that we talk through some of this stuff. So I'm just going to simplify it. Here's what I think happened, right? I think that being an attorney, Alex Murdaugh knew how to throw off some of the investigators. Now, one of the things that kind of sticks out in my mind is that both Maggie and Paul were shot by different guns. One was a long rifle, one was a shotgun. And this would have been very smart for Alex Murdaugh to do because it would show two different shooters, or at least it could lead a jury to think that there was two separate shooters in this case, right? And it would take some planning on that. A couple other things that stick out with me is the Instagram photos at 7 o'clock, and then you see the video where you hear Alec Murdaugh's voice where they're at the kennels, and then you hear the murders happen later on. And I don't mean here, but from a coroner's perspective, that the murders happened between 9 and 9:30. All of that is showing me that, hey, at least Alec was in the area and not sitting at home like he said he was. Now, do keep in mind when something like that would happen, I do feel that, your memory might not be 100%, especially if you found your wife and son murdered. I couldn't imagine how that feels like. So is there an element in there that could say, hey, maybe he had forgot what he was doing prior, or maybe he had forgot that he went out to the kennel? That is a real possibility. For me, it's all of this other stuff that's adding up to the privilege and the wealth and how many other things have happened over the years that they've gotten away with because of that privilege, because of that wealth, and just being attorneys, right? We've heard from friends of Paul that, it was Paul's way or no way, right? And keep in mind, that's the son. He's 20 years old and he's already got that mentality. And now you fast forward and see some of the things that happened in that county. It's appearing that Alec had that same mentality, right? And Alec got busted. And it just so happens to be on the day that he gets busted for fraud from his firm that his wife and son gets murdered, and also his dad becomes ill. These are all things that just don't add up for me. And again, I think everybody is innocent until they're proven guilty, but the way the evidence is pointing out right now is not looking very good for Alec Murdaugh. So I'm going to leave you with this. I want to know what you folks think. I know this is kind of a longer video. There's a lot of information, and there's still some information we didn't cover in here. I was trying to cover the top hits, try to get you all up to speed with what's going on with this case. We will definitely do a live stream when the case is over and talk about it from that perspective. But I want to hear from comments from you. What do you think I missed? What do you think was in there that could have been added in that would show that he was either guilty or not guilty? Because I think that that's important. And what's just your overall thoughts of the case? So with that being said, I look forward to seeing you on my next live stream, which will be later this week, and a video next week. And I do appreciate all your support. With that being said, I'm Tim Solberg, and I'm over and out.